the agency aware that GMOs were different, the overwhelming consensus among the scientists working at the FDA was that GMOs were different and dangerous. They repeatedly urged their superiors to require studies, but were ignored because Monsanto was in charge. So, this is a day of standing up against Monsanto. But we're doing it not just for ourselves, and we're doing it not just for humanity, but we're doing it for all living beings and all future generations. To understand that in perspective, yes, we are the voice of the animals, we are the voice of bacteria, we are the voice of fungi, we are the voice of insects, we are the voice of our pets, of trees, because it was Monsanto's stated goal. Back in 1999, it was reported that their early stated goal was to genetically engineer 100% of all commercial seeds in the world and patent them, and to sell them with the associated chemicals. In fact, another biotech firm in that same conference in January 1999 projected a complete takeover of all natural seeds within 5 years. So their plan was to replace nature from the seed up, and now it's expanded. The biotech industry wants to introduce genetically engineered mosquitoes in Key West. They want to introduce genetically engineered salmon. They want to introduce genetically engineered trees. They want to genetically engineer life. They want to eliminate the products of the billions of years of evolution. And so when we stand up to Monsanto, we are breathing with all living beings. And not only that, it's not just this generation. It's all future generations. Because the genes released today will outlast the effects of global warming and nuclear waste. They become a permanent feature of the gene pool. And we want to make it as tiny as possible. But we know with current technology, we cannot fully clean up the self-propagating genetic pollution already released by Monsanto. So, in a sense, we are protecting nature. And we are protecting all living beings and all future generations. And no ancestor of ours has ever had the opportunity to do so much good as we have now. Because there's never been a technology that has been so dangerous and so long-lived as this genetically engineered technology. And so this is one reason why I say, when I think of Monsanto, I think that in their quieter, more reflective moments, they ask themselves, what would Darth Vader do? Now, here's some interesting news. We know that the FDA scientists repeatedly warned that GMOs were dangerous. Now we have thousands of doctors prescribing non-GMO diets, and many are reporting a dramatic improvement in the health of their patients. As I went to San Diego, and I went around Southern California, and I spoke 51 places in California during the Prop 37 battle, I would ask people, how many of you have eliminated GMOs and noticed an improvement in your health? So I want to ask you now, with a show of hands, how many of you have removed GMOs to some good extent and noticed an improvement in your health? Raise your hand, please. So I can't hear you, but I'll tell you what some of you may be telling me if I did ask you what symptoms. Because I've asked this all over California and all over the United States. I'm quite sure that someone is going to say, allergies got better. So how many people notice that allergies got better? Raise your hand. Okay? How about asthma? Anyone with asthma? Okay? How about gastrointestinal problems of any type? These are always represented in the audience. How about headaches or migraines? Okay? How about skin conditions? Okay? Here's a harder one, because it's hard to track. Problems with fertility. How about problems with anxiety or depression or some mental or emotional issue? Yes. How about, I had people with kidney disease. That's rare, but kidney disease improved. We see some hands actually up there. How about hypertension or diabetes? So you see from the hands in the audience you're reacting in a similar way as people around the country. Now, some of you may be asking, yeah, but how do you know it was a GMO? Because when you get rid of GMOs, well, you buy organic. How many people buy organic to get rid of GMOs? Raise your hand. Okay. And how many people reduce processed foods to get rid of GMOs? Okay? So those two right there introduce a whole host of cofactors. You see, it may be the preservatives in the processed foods, or it may be the other synthetic chemicals used in non-organic food. But when you ask veterinarians and farmers the experience of taking pigs and cows off of GMOs and putting them on non-GMOs, there's no cofactors. They just remove the GM soy and insert non-GM soy. They remove the GM corn and insert the non-GM corn. And you don't have... And there you have the animals getting better in the same categories of diseases and disorders that the people are reporting, without cofactors, often within 2 days or 3 days or a week. The same diseases and disorders are also afflicting the lab animals fed GMOs, according to the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. Gastrointestinal, immune, organ damage, reproductive. And these same disorders are on the rise in the U.S. population since GMOs were introduced. And these same disorders would be predicted if you look simply at the characteristics of the two main toxins associated with GMOs. Bt toxin, which is produced in corn, that breaks open the stomach of insects to kill them. It pokes small holes in human cells, so it might be burrowing holes inside the intestines. It ends up in the bloodstream. It ends up in the bloodstream of unborn fetuses. It may end up inside their brain because of no blood-brain barrier. It also is an allergen. It also promotes allergic reactions to other not formally harmless compounds. Then you have the Roundup, which is an endocrine disruptor, and it chelates, and it's linked to cancer and tumors, and it kills beneficial gut bacteria, and it may shrink cells in the digestive tract, making the leaky gut that was started by the Bt toxin that much worse, etc., etc. So if you look at the characteristics of the GMOs, they are predisposed to create these gastrointestinal, immune, and other problems that you guys are noticing are getting better from, that the cows and pigs are getting better from, that the lab animals are suffering from, and that the population of the United States is unfortunately suffering greater amounts, probably due to the introduction of GMOs in large part. But the good news here is this. People do get better when they remove GMOs. Animals do get better. Now, here's the very good news. When you think about trying to stop Monsanto and stop this craziness, so many people are they're trained to think that they must convince the government to make a change. They must ask for a bailout. Well, here's what happened in 1999. At the same conference that Monsanto told 100% of the commercial seeds would be genetically engineered within 15 to 20 years was their goal. Another company projected a 95% takeover of all commercial seeds within 5 years by 2004. Their entire plans were derailed 3 weeks later when the gag order was lifted on a scientist in Europe who knew that GMOs were inherently dangerous because he discovered it in his brilliantly designed research, but was fired from his job after 35 years and silenced with threats of a lawsuit. When his gag order was lifted on February 16, 1999, the media went crazy with it in Europe, not in the United States. Over 700 articles were written in the UK press alone within a month. Within 10 weeks, the tipping point was achieved in Europe. It was not the European Commission. It was not the UK government, which is still pro-GMO. It was Nestle's, Unilever, McDonald's, Burger King. It was the food companies responding to consumers who are at the top of the food chain. It was us. Our European counterparts said, we don't want to eat GMOs, and the food companies realized there's no consumer benefits to GMOs, they're a pure marketing liability, we're getting rid of them. And the same companies that got rid of them in Europe continue to sell us GMOs here. But they saw a tipping point against bovine growth hormone, kicked out of Walmart, Starbucks, Yoplait, Dan, and most American dairies because of consumer education and concern. They don't need 51% loss in market share. It's not a vote. They're not going to wait to lose half of their market share before realizing it's time to get rid of GMOs. Any drop in market share that they can identify as being caused by the increased awareness and concern of about GMOs in the U.S. population, when they see they're suffering financially, and they realize there's no one waking up in the morning clamoring for their daily dose of Roundup or Bt toxin, they will get rid of GMOs. We think as little as 5% of U.S. shoppers avoiding GMOs will be sufficient, and I tell you, we're winning the battle. We are making headway. This is the good news I want to tell you today. I don't believe there's anyone else that's been traveling around America for 10 years, crisscrossing it months at a time, speaking about GMOs as I have. And I can say with great confidence and experience that I have never been more optimistic and never been more confident at our coming tipping point as I am now. We have never seen, yes. There are, first of all, Prop 37 did a huge blessing for the country in bringing greater awareness. It became cool to be against GMOs. Danny DeVito was against it, Bill Maher, Dick Van Dyke. So give yourselves a hand for Prop 37 and the impact it had on all the country and all the world. That was fantastic. Now, we are seeing thousands of people engaged in anti-GMO activism. We are seeing thousands of people, many more, millions of people now seeking non-GMO products. Over 1 million people are consulting our shopping guide at non-GMOshoppingguide.com or our free iPhone application, Shop No GMO. And we require products to be non-GMO project verified. And what Whole Foods president said to USA Today recently, he said when a product switches to non-GMO project verified, it increases sales by 15 to 30%. That is incredibly powerful news that every other food executive is paying attention to. They all read information from the Nielsen report, the Nielsen survey, and earlier this year it came out that products labeled as non-GMO increased sales by 26%, far outstripping the second and third place groups based on wellness claims. So it's the number one fastest growing group of foods in the country, and this is because we are winning the education campaign. And how many of you, by show of hands, saw Genetic Roulette, The Gamble of Our Lives, the movie? Okay, so of you, how many felt far more motivated to be vigilant in avoiding GMOs in your own life? Raise your hand. Okay, it's almost the same number in every case, because in almost every case, people want to avoid eating GMOs. We have the talking points, we have the knowledge, we have the evidence sufficient to convince Americans to get rid of GMOs. And if we're looking for a tipping point, maybe 15 million Americans, that's easy. We don't have to try and convince the couch potato junk food eating American that food relates to health. He'll never know that he's eating a GMO. He'll never know we got rid of it for him. We will get rid of it, not having to speak or convince anyone who's resistant. There are 28 million Americans that buy organic on a regular basis. We only need 15 million for a tipping point in our estimation. We have moms who may not change the diet for themselves, but will do it for their children. We have pet owners who will do it for their dogs and cats, and horse owners. We have sick people who, when they hear from their friends and their doctors that getting rid of GMOs may give them relief. We have far more people in the sick than we need in the United States. We have the doctors now prescribing non-GMO diets, and we have religious people who believe that GMO means God move over. So we have more people than we need among the receptive groups, the people who want to hear this message, the people who want to eat healthy, the people who want to tell their friends. We have the talking points, the data, the facts, the doctors to convince those people. We have the non-GMO products to feed those people so that it provides the economic pressure on those still using GMOs. And so what we're seeing now is the early signs of a tipping point where we hear from company executives in the conventional food industry who candidly say to their friends, I think the American consumer has reached a tipping point on the GMO issue. We hear that there are mainstream conventional food companies who are quietly becoming non-GMO project verified to announce it perhaps later this year because they realize they have to become non-GMO to maintain their market share. And as soon as they become non-GMO, what happens to their direct competitors? So this march against Monsanto is totally timely. In my mind, it is happening just before these bigger waves come and more companies declare non-GMO. We see an illustration of the rising concern about GMOs in the 27 states that introduced labeling legislation so far. Connecticut Senate just passed the labeling bill 35-1. And it was interesting. They couldn't introduce a new bill. So they did a brilliant thing. They took an existing bill that had already been introduced, took all of the language out of that bill, and just replaced it with a GMO labeling bill. So they had a chance to vote on it. It was brilliant. And Vermont voted in favor, the House voted in favor of a labeling bill. And Maine looks like it's going to vote in favor of a labeling bill. And Washington State has a ballot initiative. So many states are percolating. Now, if we pass a labeling bill, it will give people more opportunity to exercise the power of the tipping point. In fact, we think that companies will remove GMOs before the label becomes required. But even without the legislation, we can get rid of GMOs in the same way we're already starting, with the market pressure, moving the market, choosing to avoid GMOs. And it doesn't have to be an altruistic choice. If you learn that eating GMOs has caused lab animals damage to their testicles, uterus, ovaries, liver, kidneys, smaller brains, potentially precancerous cell growth, smaller babies, fewer babies, fivefold increase in infant mortality, babies with hair growing in their mouths. If you realize the truth about what GMOs can do, that eating GMOs might transfer the genes into your gut bacteria, which may continue to function. In the case of BT toxin from corn, it might turn our intestinal flora into living pesticide factories. When we realize what is happening to our friends, to our communities, when GMOs were introduced, and how the irritable bowel skyrocketed, and autism, and bipolar disorder, and inflammatory bowel, and allergies, and asthma, and all these things increased, and how people removing GMOs often find relief from these same things. We have the information, we have the power, and now we're seeing the numbers.
GMOs that we're
watching right now. In closing, I want to say this.
In Balboa Park.
This is an opportunity that has not come before, to help protect all living beings and all future generations, to protect ourselves and to protect our loved ones. This started out as a march against Monsanto, and what it really is a march to protect life. They want to eliminate the products of the billions of years of evolution. Yes. Monsanto represents the extreme. A company willing to capture, alter, mutilate the most compactified level of intelligence in nature, and to do so ignoring its own research showing problems, stifling others' research, and doing it on a permanent basis. We represent nature. We represent life itself, saying, no, not on our watch,
Yun yung Gemma?
not on our
In your
earth,
heart.
Yes.
not in our food,